If you feel like you're falling apart right now, I have good news. You aren't feeling, you aren't going crazy. You are actually purging. Most people mistake spiritual purging for going backwards or healing not working. But purging isn't a sickness. Purging is the recovery. Think about food poisoning. When you vomit or have diarrhea, it feels terrible, it's violent, it's messy. But is vomiting the problem? Is it an illness? No, right? Vomiting isn't a sickness, it's actually the solution. Your body is intelligent enough to know what doesn't resonate. So it is aggressively expelling toxin that doesn't belong to your system. Spiritual purging is the exact same mechanism, just that it's on an energetic level. As you awaken, your frequency rises, more light will enter your body. The denser energy cannot occupy the same space. So the old, dense, heavy energy of trauma, fear, limiting belief has to get pushed out. There's simply no room for this dense energy anymore. So everything gets pushed to the surface and being purged out. So the chaos you feel isn't you breaking down, it's your soul recalibrating to the new energy. Your soul is just doing a detox. You're not broken, you're actually being upgraded. You might not even know or understand what you're purging, but it doesn't matter. What you need to understand is this: what you are purging is something that your soul and your heart doesn't want. It's just like how vomit throws out all the toxin from your body out of the system, right? Those things that don't serve you moving forward, so they need to be vomited out of your system. Purging is just a recalibration of energy, it's a process of matching to a newer, higher frequency. But now, how do you know if it's a spiritual purging or it's just you having a mental breakdown? There is one massive difference, which is the narrative. When you have a psychological panic attack, there is usually a story attached to it. I'm sad because he left me, or I'm anxious because I might lose my job. I don't know what will happen in the future. There is always a cause and effect loop in the mind. But with spiritual purging, from personal experience, there is no noise inside the head. You might be sitting down, totally calm, doing your own stuff. You aren't thinking about your ex, you aren't thinking about money, and suddenly, bam, you are hit with a wave of grief. You started crying uncontrollably, your heart starts pounding, and your mind's confused. Why am I crying? Nothing really happened. This is a sign. Spiritual purging is somatic and energetic. It's not induced by the mind. It is the energy moving out of your body, sometimes bypassing the mind entirely. If you are feeling all sorts of emotions such as fear, anger, and grief without any reason or story, as though you lost control of your emotions, you aren't crazy. You're just purging. And after you purge, you actually get back to a level of stability and calmness, like what just happened just now. You can still somewhat function in between the purges. That's the difference between mental breakdown and spiritual purging. People who don't understand this or have not experienced purging before would think that you're crazy. But that's because they don't understand that purging happens in cycles. It's not linear. It doesn't happen in a straight line. It's not like a problem which you can solve like step one, do this, step two, do that. And each step you take, you get closer to the goal of solving your problem, right? It's not like that. Spiritual purging comes in waves. Each time you experience a purge, you are clearing it at a deeper, more permanent level of your soul. It doesn't happen all at once because you will fry your nervous system. Your soul is wise, so it doesn't take on more than you can handle. From my personal experience, there are three distinct waves. The first wave is the attachment purge, which deals more on the mental and ego level. This is where your ego and spirit has some sort of tug of war. Your spirit say, go this way. let go of the old stuff, detach, release. But your ego says, no, no way. And cling on to the job, the money, the love, the friendship, the house, the loved one who passed on, and your health. But the ego cannot win because external things starts to get purged out of your life. Your friends go away, you get fired from a job, your partner leaves you. Refusing to let go of the attachment only causes more suffering and pain. Resistance equals to pain. And that's why many of us end up in a dark night of the soul. The faster you let go, the faster you move through this wave of purging. In late 2019, my intuition told me to leave my friends' community, but my ego was very reluctant. So I spent 3 years in this cycle of repeatedly leaving and returning to this cycle. It wasn't until I fully committed to my own path that my egoic attachment began to break, and I began to move on to the next wave, which is the emotional purge. Once the external attachment are gone, the internal suppression begins to surface. As at this stage, you aren't mentally attached to the thing or the person anymore, or at least not that attached. But because you stop resisting, the blockages are gone. This creates a clear path for your old traumas and limiting belief and emotional wounds to rise out and finally be purged from your system. That's why you may be feeling all kind of emotion out of nowhere. Think of it this way. When you go through a spiritual awakening, your upper chakras, which are more spirit bound, they are tuned into the higher frequency much quicker. But your lower chakra are grounded in the physical earth. They take much longer to move that energy. The ego is usually what holds these three chakras together, these layers together. But as you start to loosen the ego's grip on the lower chakras, your oldest beliefs start resurfacing. The solar plexus releases your old identity and how you see yourself. The sacral chakra brings out your childhood wounds, and the root chakra unearths your deepest fear and sense of security. Everything that's trapped since your formative years start bubbling up like bubbles rising out to the top of a glass of champagne. I experienced this in the late 2023 when my friend returned to his home country. I was hit by a wave of emotion. I'll be sitting quietly in the library, not even thinking about him, when out of nowhere, this intense separation anxiety and hyperventilation would strike. The purge was so overwhelming that I had to leave immediately and just walk in nature to regulate my nervous system. Once that period of emotional intensity kind of subsided, like the wave become less frequent, the symptoms become more physical. For the last 2 years, I experienced buzzing at my heart chakra, like buzzing sensation in my limbs, tender spots on my body, and exhaustion and fatigue from time to time. I didn't have the same drive to work as I used to because my body was busy with dealing with the total energetic reset. Then recently, I experienced the third wave of purging, a deeper, more profound kind of purging, which I call the subconscious purge. This is the final cleanup. You know, when you're doing spring cleaning, your home always have this one hard to reach corner or a tiny spot in the behind the furniture. It's incredibly dusty and dirty, but you completely overlook it unless you were really paying attention. That's what this stage is. It's the final little bit that needs to be purged. There are things hidden so deep in our subconscious that we aren't even fully aware of them. But because our spirit wants them to be cleared, it will bring them into your awareness through vivid, intense dreams. For example, lately during the 2025 winter solstice, I was hit by a series of emotional vivid dreams that reveals layers of grief I didn't even know they were there. Then on Christmas night, I actually dreamt of my own funeral. That symbolized ego death. A part of me was dying. I made a separate video all about that experience, which you can find on the screen now. If you don't know how to interpret the symbols, you might panic and think that I'm regressing or I'm doing worse than before. The truth is, your soul is just working overtime. Anything you doesn't process consciously during the day, your spirit process them automatically while you're asleep. Don't overthink the symbols. It's helpful to understand symbols, but it's not strictly necessary to know what it means. In fact, if you're prone to overthinking, you're the type who worry a lot, you might not be in the right vibration to interpret them correctly. For example, when you dream of your own funeral, you might be thinking, oh, am I going to die soon? What am I going to do? But that's too literal an interpretation. Dreaming of death doesn't mean you're going to die soon. The spirit often speak in metaphors and symbols. Sometimes the meaning is clear, but more often than not, it's a total mystery. You might be purging ancestral baggage from generation back or past life contract that have nothing to do with your current lifetime. That is why the emotion you feel during purging can feel so overwhelming and confusing. You're clearing out things you didn't even know you were carrying. If you really feel the need to know, consult your intuition. Your intuition will have the answers, unless it's not something that you're supposed to know. But honestly, you don't have to do anything. The work is being done for you. The dream itself already help you process whatever you need to process automatically. So you just need to trust the process. Now, looking at these waves, you're probably wondering, when will this be over? Can I speed things up? But what I've learned is that slow is actually better. My 6-year journey might seem long, but that pace was much gentler on my system and allows for integration. Some people will use plant medicine or intense breath work to force the process. And while that works, it comes with a massive risk. You are essentially squeezing 6 years of purging into a single weekend or a week. You aren't experiencing waves anymore. You're inviting a tsunami, all of them squeezed into one single weekend. If you're not prepared for this can easily unroot you. It's like pulling a vegetable out of the ground to make it grow faster. You don't actually help the plant, you actually tear the roots. What I prefer is something that I call soul-led purging. This is where you let your soul dictate the curriculum. Your soul knows exactly what you need to purge and when is the best time to do so. It knows how much you can handle. Yes, it might take longer. It took me 6 years to reach my deep purging phase. But because it was spread out, I remained kind of stable. I could still write blog posts and create videos like this. I could still function in the society. I could integrate insight and attune myself to a newer, higher frequency step by step before the next purge comes. Of course, it doesn't feel gentle when you're in it, like the anxiety and the crying are real. But compared to a tsunami, it's much safer. Now, having said that, there is no right or wrong path. You do you. If you are a very logical, masculine, physically focused person with a very rigid ego, you might need that sledgehammer, like plant medicine, to really crack this shell. But if you are intuitive like me, your system is really very sensitive. You don't really need a hammer. What you need is to trust your soul, and you trust that your soul knows the divine timing, and be patient. If this period of purging feels kind of long, that's because your soul is protecting your nervous system. The good news is that we are purging much faster and more frequently than ever before. Have you noticed that more people seem to be going through some kind of transformation or a big shift in their life? If you look at social media posts reflecting on 2025, you'll see people sharing their experiences. Either they have a big struggle, such as sudden divorce or breakup, or they learn something very valuable and big in the past year. There's a reason for this. In numerology, 2025, when you add the numbers up together, is year 9, which marks the end of a 9-year cycle. And 2026, when you add it out, is 10, and when you reduce it, it's actually year 1. So it's the time for a massive clearing before we start fresh in 2026. Year 1 is the beginning of a new 9-year cycle. If you feel like your life has been falling apart lately, you're actually clearing the deck for a brand new beginning, a brand new chapter of life. From a collective standpoint, this is actually beautiful. We are rising towards a higher vibration, but as we progress, you'll see people fall into one of two camps. Some people will lean into the spiritual purge, experiencing the emotional release and vivid dreams. Others will fight it. Their ego will be activated and they will resist the change with everything they have. This could lead to more conflict and getting stuck in that very first wave of suffering. But the thing is, the wave always wins. You can't fight the storm, you can't beat nature. The wiser thing to do is actually surrender to the purge. Ride the wave, surf it. Life gets so much smoother when you stop resisting the tide. On the surface, it might not look like you're doing well. Physically, mentally, emotionally, you might feel like a mess. But spiritually, if you can see the big picture of all this, you'll know exactly what's happening. You aren't failing, you're actually evolving. And to support your soul, you must stop introducing lower vibration stuff into your system. Be more selective. Your heart doesn't want the drama, and your soul doesn't want the clutter. That's exactly why your body is working so hard to purge them. So for the coming year, be fiercely mindful of what you consume. Be intentional about who you hang out with, your daily habits, and your deepest intentions. Clear out anything that your heart no longer resonate with. Start with a physical decluttering, not just your home, but also your social circles, your workspace, and even your finances. This is to help you align with the deeper purging happening on the energetic level. You do the outer work and you let your soul do the inner work. That's how you work with your spirit and find flow. If you're feeling stuck in your spiritual journey, maybe what you need isn't a minor tweak, but a major overhaul. Watch this next video to find out more.